Okay, so we're doing another book review today on The Spirit of Intimacy. And with that, it is the ancient African teachings and the ways of relationships. And so express the contents for you. Chapter 1 is Down, O Home of the Old Ways. 2 is A Song of Spirit. 3 is Embrace of Community. 4 is Ritual, the Call to Spirit. 5 is Born to a Purpose. 6 is Initiation, Gaining Knowledge. 7 is Marriage. 8 is Intimacy in the Ash Circle. And 9 is The Illusion of Romance. 10 is Continual Renewal. 11 is Conflict, a Spirit Gift. 12 is Divorce and Loss, Cutting Divine. 13 is Homosexuality, The Gatekeepers. And 14 is Barca. So in chapter 1, we read that the Dano, home to the old ways. The Dagara people are mainly associated with the West African coastal countries of Ghana, Ivory Coast, and Togo. Inland from these countries at their northern border is Burkina Faso, formerly referred to as Upper Volta. In 1984, the government of Upper Volta decided that its colonial name was too troublesome, so they chose a new name, which means the land of the proud ancestors. When in 1882, a European council sitting in Belgium tried to figure out how to share this big land of Africa, they ended up dividing the Dagara tribe into 3 different nations. There are a few 100,000 Dagara people in Burkina Faso, another few 100,000 in Ghana, and smaller number in the Ivory Coast. This division of people occurred as a result of the arbitrary nature of colonial powers who didn't accept tribal communities as nations. Socially or communally, we are not that different from indigenous communities elsewhere. Maybe what should be mentioned is that we don't have the amenities that one has here in the West. And in the village where life is directly inspired by the earth, by the trees, the hills, and rivers, the kind of relationship that exists between man and nature is directly translated in subtle ways into the building of community and into the building of relationships that exist between people. So, in Africa, at least in the Dagara villages, buildings are mainly there for sleeping, for ritual space, and for storing food, but the actual life of the village is outside. You wouldn't have any particular place where you would go and change a diaper, for instance. It would happen right outside. You would bathe at the river and dress and groom yourself outside. You would go to the bathroom outside and use leaves from the nearby tree. Talk about cultural conflict for those who despise the old days. In tribal life, one is forced to slow down, to experience the now and commune with the earth and nature. Patience is a must. No one seems to understand the meaning of hurry up. The element earth is responsible for our groundedness, our sense of identity, and our ability to nurture and to support one another. Water is peace, focus, wisdom, and reconciliation. Mineral helps us to remember our purpose and gives us the means to communicate and to make sense out of what others are saying. Fire is about dreaming, keeping our connection to the self and to the ancestors, and keeping our visions alive. Nature helps us to be our true self, to go through major changes and life-threatening situations as it brings about magic and laughter. The family in Africa is always extended. You would never refer to your cousin as cousin because that would be an insult. So your cousins are your sisters and brothers, your nieces are your children, your uncles are your fathers, your aunts and your mothers, your sisters are your husbands, is your husband, and your brother's wife is your wife. This concept of the big family is really helpful. I remember when I was a kid, I had the choice of a different father every day, depending on my mood. So if I wanted one of my uncles to be my father for the day, I would focus all my attention on that person and ignore the others. And the others wouldn't take it personally because they saw it as an opportunity for me to decide what I wanted. This allows a large number of people in the village to acknowledge the child and to see her or his spirit. Chapter 2, A Song of Spirit. Intimacy in general terms is a song of spirit, inviting two people to come together and share their spirit. It is a song that no one can resist. We hear it while we are awake and sleeping, in community or alone. You cannot ignore it. There is a spiritual dimension to every relationship, no matter what its origins. Whether it is acknowledged as spiritual or not, two people come together because spirit wants them together. What is important now is to look at the relationship as spirit driven instead of driven by the individual. The role of spirit in our relationships is to be the driver, to monitor our relationships for good. Its purpose is to help us to be better people, to bind us in which and in such a way that we maintain our connection not only with ourselves but also with the great beyond. Spirit helps us fulfill our own life purpose and maintain our sanity. The spirit of the human being is in the same way in our tradition. Each of us is seen as spirit who has taken the form of human in order to carry out a purpose. Spirit is the energy that helps us connect, that helps us see beyond our racially limited parameters, and also helps us in ritual and in connecting with the ancestors. Ancestors are also referred to as spirits. The spirit of an ancestor has a capacity to see not only into the invisible spirit world, but also into this world, and it serves as our eyes on both sides. It is this power of ancestors that will help us direct our lives and avoid falling into huge ditches. Ancestor spirits can see future, past, and present, and they can inside of us, and they can see all of the dimensions. We can connection with spirit through ritual. Various rituals can help us to connect. 6. Simply expressing your longing for the support of ancestors, you will attract a lot of spirits. More often than not, the person that is reaching out does not have a connection to self either. And so you have two people who are disconnected at both the spiritual and the personal level. The relationship does not have any kind of grounding force or foundation to hold it. I see so many romantic relationships in the West being driven by control and ego. To bring these relationships back to health, people must begin to see that spirit is behind their being together and to put control and ego aside. The first thing to do now is to say, I've heard you, spirit. I may not know what to do, but I know that I just heard you. And from then on, start to release control and the ego. The ride in your relationship brings spirit from the background of the dark corner. The coming together of two spirits gives birth to a new spirit. You can call it the spirit of the relationship or the spirit of intimacy. It is very important because it acts as the barometer of the relationship, and it must be nurtured and kept alive. If that spirit dies, then the relationship dies. Okay, so in another part of the review, I'll do chapter 3 where it's talking about community. And for here, I'm going to stop and say that I wanted to share this book because it is among a lot of my collection of authors and scholars and just information, knowledge based in the context of tradition, African cosmology, and thereafter what the appropriated term of ecotherapy and ecopsychology is. And so when I keep speaking about tradition, and I keep speaking about return to your nature, and I keep speaking about these cosmologies, you have a reference point from one of these books. And Miss Sobonfu Somé, she has done a beautiful job of expressing her tradition of Burkina Faso, of the Dagara tradition, and I want to share her beautiful words with you all. And so until the next review, And if there's anything that I have said and shared here that resounds with you, please subscribe, please like, and please share and comment. And I'm going to see you in the next video.